I'm Bert Kendall. I'm the acting commander of the Anderson-Mayberry Legion Post 91 that we're sitting in. I've been active for about 15 or 18 years. I've been trying to find a new commander, but haven't found one, so I am a repeat. We have an active little post. We have 5 90-year-olds who come to meetings, and so we're an older group. At 78, I'm in the middle of the pack, and we try our best. We make ends meet. Right now we're doing some drainage work on the cabin. We're very proud of our flags. We have approximately 80 casket flags that we've collected since World War I. We protect them. They're in the plastic bins downstairs. And if it's a rainy day, on the 4 days we put out the flags, which are Memorial Day, Flag Day, July 4th, and Veterans Day, we don't put them up because rain could damage them. Some of them are old flags, and we don't want it. We take it very seriously. If someone gave us their flag for their loved one who's passed, we protect it, and we do that. The Legion runs the Memorial Day and Veterans Day ceremonies here in Yarmouth. Most of our members are from Yarmouth, Cumberland, and North Yarmouth. We welcome people from other places as well. Memorial Day is a little trickier in that we march from the high school. It's about a little over a mile to the green. We have a color guard. The color guard has people, all of whom are in their 70s, and they come out every time. 2 rifles, 2 flags. We found out that we were having trouble getting strong enough people to carry an M1, which is almost 10 pounds. So we spent a few bucks and bought some ceremonial rifles, the kind you see in college campuses and bands that weigh 4 pounds. So we have happier color guard people. And then Veterans Day, we simply just march from here to the green and have our ceremony. It's also nice that the AMVETS Post number 2 on North Road invites us to a luncheon every year on Veterans Day, which is always nice. The posts are active in a number of other things. We give scholarships. We have speakers. Right now we're working on a drainage problem with help from the town, and many other things, such as this Veterans to Veterans program. We had our first annual deep sea fishing tour. I'm not a fisherman, so I didn't go, but one of our members arranged a boat, and 4 or 5 guys went and had a great time. So I'm sure that will grow in the future. We used to have a banquet, but we got old and the numbers were dwindling, so now we just have a special dinner sometime in June when officers they're elected to take over from June to the following May. The last town I served in New Jersey was Glen Rock, which is an upscale commuting town near New York City, 13,000 people. And I'm new in town. I worked there from 1998 to 2005 when I retired. And the mayor called me in one day. He was a good friend. He's on the council for years, good man. He was an insurance executive still working in the late 70s. And he said, "Bert, we've got a controversy between the Legion and the VFW. You're a member of both. See if you can solve it." So I said, "What's the controversy about?" He said, "Well, they are raising $18,000 to put up flagpoles on our town office lawn, which is going to look magnificent. And there's an argument of whether we should include the Merchant Marine." Now, we had some Merchant Marine people there, and they had a very hazardous job in World War II. They were on slow freighters and other ships, no armament, were bombed, and they lost more percentage-wise than any other service. So, didn't know what to do, so I decided to call the Pentagon. and I got hold of some colonel, and I said, "Here's our problem," and he started to chuckle. I said, "What's so funny?" He said, "We just solved that problem here. The Secretary of Defense decreed that there will be 6 branches of service: Army, Marines, Navy, Air Force, Coast Guard, and Merchant Marine." So I went in and reported to the mayor. He said, "Good work. Make sure they put up 6 flagpoles." So that solved the problem. And for some reason, it was the Legion that didn't want the Merchant Marine, and the VFW wanted the Merchant Marine. So that was solved. They had Glen Rock had a big 4th of July parade, and many towns in Jersey did that. Then I came to Maine, and I wanted to transfer my membership. Since I had been summering in Lovell, Maine, where my family had a summer place, they had a very active VFW, and it was Freiburg Lovell Post. So I decided to join that. They also had the fun thing of they would work at the Freiburg Fair, which is a hoot. And we would have a great time working at the fair on behalf of the VFW. In 1 week, they could earn enough money to support themselves for a year. Then I decided to look around for a Legion post, and a friend invited me to a dinner here at the log cabin back in probably 2006 or 7. So I've been a member since then. And then I was happy as an adjutant, taking minutes and keeping out of trouble, I thought. And then the commander died. So they asked me to be commander. And I was commander for a couple of years, and there were people in between. There were 2 people in between. From about 2017 on, I've been the commander and haven't been able to give it up. I enjoy the work, but I'm getting old, and there are times when I would prefer not to lead a meeting. When we retired in 2005, we were looking for a house, and we were looking in Yarmouth, because I'm an old Bowdoin grad, and I know the area, and this was the fastest place inland up Route 115 to our camp in Lovell. We found a nice house in Cumberland and bought there, but the tie to Yarmouth soon came with being in the VFW post. And we have many friends who live in Yarmouth. It's a great town, as is Cumberland and North Yarmouth. So that was our connection. So it was retired from Glen Rock, New Jersey, and moved into Cumberland, Maine. I was in ROTC at Bowdoin between 1963 and 1967. One of the reasons was both my father and older brother were scientists. My father was exempt from the service because he was working on research, Navy paint. Would you believe in the old days they would paint ships with flammable paint, so they needed to get rid of that. My brother was at Wesleyan in Connecticut. He got married before 1965 and didn't have to serve. So I just knew I was going to get taken, and I went through the ROTC and was commissioned in 1967 as an Army intelligence officer. Why Army intelligence? Well, I wasn't going to volunteer in infantry and run right over to Vietnam, even though that's where I eventually ended up. So I went through boot camp at Fort Devens, and then graduated with my commission. Now, fortunately, the Army is one of the few services that will delay you for graduate school. So I wanted to work overseas. I thought about being in the Foreign Service, and I got into a program in Syracuse, the Maxwell School, where they'd send 10 students to India every year for a year and 5 to Pakistan. I was one of the 5 to Pakistan, serving in Dhaka, which is now Bangladesh, very poor, crowded country. So I got out of, well, that's how I got into city management, actually. When I graduated, I wrote the Army saying I'm getting out with my master's degree from Syracuse after my year abroad working. in May. Please take me right away, because I've done all the summer jobs. I've been a cabin boy, a truck driver, you name it, I've done it in the summer, and I'd really like to get my 2 years out of the way. So in typical Army fashion, they write back and said, you can start in October. So now my mother helped, because she wrote me, I was up at Syracuse, and she said, Bert, your father and I go to Maine every summer. You can have the house to yourself. Do whatever you want to do. Just mow the grass. And so I did that. And I wrote the new city administrator at Plainfield, Kennedy Shaw, and I said, I didn't use these exact words, but my feeling was, give me $100 a week beer money, and I'll go to work for you. So he wrote back the next day and said, take $95 and start Monday. So I spent 3 or 4 months until the Army took me working as his assistant, and had a great time. It also became a social thing, because I met a girl I eventually married, and we got married right before I went over to Vietnam. So if you're in Army intelligence or any non-combat arm, you have to pick a combat arm. So I said to myself, not infantry, artillery, there are a lot of artillery spotters in Vietnam. How about armor? It's too muddy for a lot of tanks and things. So I go into armor school, and while I was in armor school, on one cold day, there was a sign on the company bulletin board that said, if you want to avoid freezing your butt out in the field, because tanks have no heaters, and it was probably 20, 25 degrees in western Kentucky, where we were at Fort Knox. You can take the Army Universal Language Exam. I was a good student in high school and college, except for foreign languages. So I figured, this is for me. I'm not going to pass anyway, and I missed a day of training in the field and freezing to death. I passed the exam, and I get sent to the Defense Language Institute at Fort Bliss, Texas, and became an interpreter after 6 months. And after that, so I had gone to armor school, Defense Language Institute, and then I was sent to my branch, which was intelligence, there in Baltimore, Maryland, at Fort Holabird. So I had one year of training, and then I went to Vietnam. By then, I had married. My wife was pregnant. I wasn't happy leaving them here, but I ended up having a great career. I'll tell you the story about getting an assignment. All of us arrived on this great big jet from McGuire Air Force Base, stop in Alaska. We looked, there was a colonel there, a guy with all these ribbons, and he had a short haircut. We used to call him lifers. And we said, sir, we're just 6 scared lieutenants. What's the safest job you've ever seen in Vietnam? And he looked at us like we were cowards or something, and he said, well, there's some outfit called Psychological Operations. They give out messages and do printing, and they're definitely non-combat. So I said, well, how do we sign up for them? He said, don't you guys know anything? I said, you're due to leave this plane and walk a half mile across the tarmac and go into this reception center. Every outfit in Vietnam sends down a list of what they need, and if you're lucky, somebody will be needing officers in psychological operations. We were all athletes, so the 6 of us kind of elbowed our way to the front of the plane, and when the doors opened up, we ran, and we were the first 6 of the 400 on the plane in line. We all got psychological operations. So we marched to another building, headquarters of the 4th PSYOP group, and a colonel was there, and he said, all right, men, attention. We stood at attention. He said, I need 2 for Saigon, and all 6 hands went up. I need 2 for Nha Trang, no hands. So we were arguing, and he said, you fellows don't understand. I'm going to go have a smoke, and when I come back, I want 2, 2, and 2. He goes down the hall, comes back in 5 minutes. We were arguing, and a fist fight ensued. And so he said, you two on this end are going to, it was Quignon up north, and the blood drained out of their face. And you two in the middle, I was one of those, you're going to the Trang. And you two on this end are going to Saigon. Those guys are fist bumping. Yeah, we got Saigon. Saigon was the most dangerous place you could go because there was fragging of officers, accidents, and all types of things. And on the way out, my sergeant, the sergeant in the room, said, "Sir, you lucked out. Nha Trang was the headquarters of the French Army during their time here, and it was known as the Riviera of Asia. It has a beautiful beach." So I had a great year, and our colonel decides that I need to go out into the field and get some experience. So I went in a field team, which consisted of a truck, the officer, a road passenger, a sergeant driver, and a GI with a rifle. And we would go out and broadcast messages, go to villages, give out candy and soap and all kinds of things. And then we'd huddle in at 5 o'clock, that's when the VC took over the roads, and wait till dawn, hope you weren't attacked. So I end up in Khartoum, which was a bad area. It had been overrun, and I couldn't sleep. They said, "Sir, your machine gun position is between 12 and 2. Anything comes over the wall, blast them." So I couldn't sleep a wink that night. The next morning, someone says, "Kendall, there's an officer on from your battalion in the Trang. Go talk to him." So I did, and he said, "Kendall, you're the senior lieutenant out of 27 lieutenants because you've gone to graduate school for 2 years." He said, "You can either stay there," and he didn't say, "and get your butt shot off," "or you can come back here and be our battalion adjutant and personnel officer." Let me think about that. So I go back to Nha Trang, and I have a safe year. First in my family. Neither my brother or father had to serve. I had uncles who were in World War II, but I'm the first in my immediate family. We went to Fort Devens, Mass., which is close by Brunswick, where I went to school. And we immediately got into a fracas with the GIs who were running the show. They had a Vietnam village. And in a Vietnam village, they were trying to make it realistic. But one of my friends was punched in the mouth by one of these, and that led to us throwing our rifles at the guy, and a big brawl started. Somebody shot a round into the air, and it stopped that. So we had an interesting time, and I understand that happened frequently. So I was at Fort Devens for a summer, or six or 8 weeks. And then when I reported to Fort Knox, of course, I had to drive from Jersey to western Kentucky. The weather was terrible. I had borrowed a car from my parents because I didn't have a car. And we first arrive, and there's a big line. All new officers stand in line for housing. So we couldn't, there was a note put up and it said, "There's no housing available. Good luck." So I'm standing with 2 other lieutenants, one from Mississippi, one from Arizona, a Chinese fellow. And we struck up a friendship. And then someone said, "Why don't you guys go up north about 20 miles from post? There are a couple of nice, I guess you'd call them trailer or home villages, and some of them are beautiful. You can find them at a reasonable rent, and which the Army's going to pay for anyway because they can't give you housing. And you probably get a 3-bedroom, and we did. So we survived Fort Knox, which was great. Then I told about making a mistake taking the Army language exam and passing. So I went to Fort Bliss, Texas. And after that, I went to Fort Holabird, Maryland. Then worked for the city of Plainfield as administrative assistant for 4 months, and then went in the. By the way, that me working there 4 months. This will be my last story. We all arrive in San Francisco, and we're headed to Oakland Army Air Base to be, they called it deroast, out of the service. We had arrived the night before about 8 or 9 o'clock, and we were due at this place at 6 a.m., and none of us were going to be late. We, of course, all of us went out drinking, and we had a high old time. We came back half in the bag, and we grabbed a bellhop. We started shoving 20s in his pocket and said, "We're going to throw you off the roof if you don't wake us up at 5 o'clock so we can make it." So I get there, hungover, filling out the paperwork, and there was a postcard, and the private who was helping me fill out said, "Sir, you got to fill this out. It's your previous employer." I kind of chuck it back at him. "I don't have a previous employer. You have to fill it out." "I'm not going to." He said, "Sir, you don't understand. You don't get out of the Army unless you fill out the postcard." Now I understand. Fill out the postcard, city administrator of Plainfield, and get back and go to civilian life. 2 weeks later, I get a call from the boss's secretary. "Bert, he wants to offer you a job as his full-time assistant." And I said to her, I said, "I'm not trying to insult you, but only lunatics work for local government." And I said, I don't mean to insult you, but I'm going to go overseas and be a rich banker. I like to travel. I've done that in graduate school and so forth. So I started on a 3-month episode at the Citibank. And I'd go in for an interview half the day. "You did a great job, come back in 2 weeks." Now I had a wife and a baby and 3 months' salary from the service. So that didn't work for long. Finally, I called them back and said, "Is that job still open?" So she laughed and said, "Oh, you want to join the asylum?" So that's how I got started in city management, and that was 1971, and it's a booming field. There are always jobs available, and I benefited over the years. There's a great opportunity to meet older veterans. They've got a wealth of knowledge. We have people in our post that have done a little of everything. For example, we have a 93-year-old home builder who built about 60 homes in the North Shore of Boston. He's still active. He has all kinds of tools. He's always helping us on projects. It's a socialization. We have a supper meeting once a month. We march in the parade. There's a lot of good things that we do, give out scholarships and so forth. So I would encourage it. Although I myself, because I used to go to night meetings all the time, I never joined until my last town. And then I knew I was going to be, and I wanted to join so I could transfer my membership from Jersey to Maine, and I did that.